The Business Journal Roundtable series is sponsored by iSynergy, creative digital advertising.
To get us started, I'd like you to introduce yourself and your company, and then tell us what was the most recent cybersecurity breach or problem that you or your firm encountered and how you handled it. Keep it kind of brief to begin with, because we'll probably be going back to this and you'll be talking more about a specific problem. So we will begin with you, and if you, Michael, if you could tell us about yourself and your company, and tell us something.
Sure. Yeah. My name is Michael Edwards. I'm with Tele-Solutions. I'm the director of IT there. Tele-Solutions is a telecommunication company that started in the 80s and went into the MSP portion of the business in 2016. I had joined their team this year, and I lead both the support side, the engineering side, as well as the phone side of the organization. Just as recently as this year, I worked with a company that had wire fraud committed on them. They received an email, they thought it was legitimate. It pointed out to wire to this account instead of this one, and they had wired money out. And when we had worked with the FBI, we were able to determine that it was overseas and there's really nothing they could do about it, and they had lost $50,000 in this transfer. So just something as innocent as an email can be as, very expensive to a company. Just coming in and having someone the ability to wire money out can be disastrous for the poorly trained individual.
Thank you.
My name is Dave Daichendt. I work for Microdoctor. Microdoctor has been around since 1989. I've actually been with the company 20 years, December 3rd, so quite a long time. We are an MSP, managed services provider, and also a data services cloud provider. We offer cloud servers, virtual workstations, VoIP systems from our Cleveland office, which is a data center. So the most recent one I can think of is a company that had a breach based on user activity, which is almost how almost all of them start. Fortunately, we caught it in time to shut it down. And also, fortunately, we had proper backup and disaster recovery in place so that we could go back before the breach and restore from the disaster recovery system to get them so that there was no loss and they were up in a few hours.
How did the breach occur?
Somebody clicked on an email that they shouldn't have, a link in an email they shouldn't have, which enabled them to have something downloaded to their computer, which then started a crawl through the system trying to take over computers and was successful to getting to their server. These things happen very quickly. Luckily, we caught it in time, and some of the software that we use immediately started working on it before we, as Microdoctor, even had an alert, which is very important these days. Things happen so quickly. The old "I have antivirus" is no longer good enough. You have to have somebody actively look for things and acting on them when they find them. Otherwise, you come in the next day and you have a message that you owe me $50,000 from some bad actor.
We'll get back to some of that. Mercy.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm Mercy Komar from L. Calvin Jones. We're an insurance agency, so I'm at the opposite end of what these gentlemen are doing. I've been doing this for quite a few years, and I got into the cyber end of it back in 2017. The most recent attacks that I have seen have all three been invoice manipulations, where the client is being instructed to send money to a false banking system. So there has been losses of 141,000, 50-some thousand, and I usually get called in after it's over to write the insurance afterwards because they didn't have it at the time.
I'm Ralph Blanco with ECMSI, established in 1999. We currently have 3 offices. One in our main office is in Struthers, downtown Struthers. We have a Champion office, and then we also have a Cleveland office. We're also a managed service provider, providing IT support and management for small to medium-sized businesses, and we also provide co-manage for those that are larger firms that have internal IT but don't want to deal with the security aspects or don't have the time to deal with the security aspects of IT. Okay. The breaches that we see are mostly email manipulation, the same type of, you've been doing business with XYZ company for quite a few years, and you get an email from that same company, but it's not really from them, and somebody changes the account. They say, hey, I'm about to change banks, and they're going back and forth with email. So a lot of the stuff that we're seeing is mostly educational, not necessarily always technical. It's more about the end users and instructing them on how to handle certain situations. Unfortunately, we're in an environment that it's, you have to verify everything to make it legitimate. So, and we'll talk a little bit more about two-factor and some of the tools that you could use to prevent people from doing stuff and that stuff. So.
My name is Robert Merva. I am the owner of Avrem Technologies in Canfield, Ohio. We were started in 2007. We've got an office in Cleveland and an office in Columbus. And like Ralph, we are a managed and co-managed IT provider for small and medium businesses. I'm hesitant to even talk about this. We have never had a client with a security breach. And I don't know, I'm just a little superstitious. Everybody knock on wood. I don't want to downplay, what that means. It certainly can happen to anyone. Statistically, we're beating the odds, but we've never had a client with ransomware. We've never had a client with an email security issue. We've got some spam that comes through every now and then, but yeah.
Well, that's great.
So far, so good.
That's great. So essentially, it's about employees. Is that right? It's about employees being vigilant, and that seems to be the prime culprit. Am I right about that?
Yeah, depending on which study you cite, between 88 and 95% of breaches originate with human error.
Yep.
And through email.
Yep.
And that happens because the email address is manipulated, or what fools people the most?
There are a number of different ways that it happens. Some of them they used to be easy. They used to be bad English in the emails and you could spot them right away. Now they've gotten to the point where an email will come from somebody in your organization, or you think it's coming from somebody in your organization, and maybe they changed an L to an I in the last name, and they're basically spoofing that user, and it'll be from somebody important in the company that says, hey, would you buy these gift cards and distribute them to the employees, but send them here, and I'm going to distribute them. There are things like that. There are emails that look very interesting and legitimate that have a link in it that somebody will click on, not knowing any better. I mean, there are many different methods.
It's big money. I mean, it's big money for them. So the social engineering, they do their homework on the back end and make things look legitimate. So that's why you got to have the multi-level of different security tools to prevent users, first off, from even getting the email, because end users, unfortunately, will click on stuff that looks legitimate, and it's not their fault. It's not like they're intentionally trying to damage the company. So I think it goes back to a culture of an organization to educate the staff, and also not be afraid that when you click on something by accident, put your hand up. It really helps us from an IT provider to say, hey, I think I clicked on something that's not legit because it took me somewhere, instead of worrying about I'm going to get in trouble because I clicked on this, because nobody does it intentionally. So I think education and being open and honest with your employees, and just talk about IT and talk about security. Everybody's in it. It's not an IT thing. It's a company thing. We're all in this together at the end of the day. So.
And I've always said it's about layers. You can't just have one methodology to protect an entire company. It's got to be kind of spread out across different technologies and different platforms and different tools, and I think that's probably the most important.
Training of the employees is becoming critical. And in the insurance end now, it's going to start soon being a requirement that you're going to have your employees trained once a year. And all of these gentlemen, I'm sure, have companies that they have the training tapes available, and it's just something that has to be done. And even if you train somebody, people still make mistakes. And unfortunately, it's becoming rather a growth industry where employees themselves are contributing by being paid on the outside. We're starting to see that now, where the employees are running renegade and damaging their employers.
You've seen that locally?
We have.
How about elaborating with no names?
Well, in working with some of the law firms that I've worked with, an employee gets angry. They don't get the raise they want. They don't get what they think they deserve. And you can be contacted very easily off the dark web by people who are literally have advertisements out there saying, I'm looking for somebody within such and such a corporation that can give me information. And they pay for it.
That's why it's important to have like layered security. As far as like even me as an owner, I don't have administrative rights in my own network. If I need to get into something, I log in as an administrator. So you can't have employees have the ability to give out critical information that could potentially damage the internals of the network. So, and that's, even us as an IT, we're all responsible for our own staff, right? So we're probably the biggest threat because if one of our staff goes rogue, they're in touch with a lot of companies. So we have tools in place that once they log into an environment, the password automatically changes. So there's ways of controlling that, and you have to have good controls. And I also believe that down the road, regulatory stuff's coming that will force companies into doing things a certain way.
So you're saying there's software that you can, or one of the protections you provide is you will know if somebody goes onto the dark web on a company computer.
Not necessarily it goes on to the dark web. I mean, you could do that from your phone. I mean, at the end of the day, it's hard to stop crazy, right? I mean, if somebody's mad and it don't matter. It's very difficult, and that's in the worldly sense. In the IT sense, it doesn't matter. So you just have to have the tools to be able to lock somebody else. If you have an employee who went rogue or you let go, obviously you have to have the controls to disable their account immediately. We talk a lot about that with companies when they get new employees. Obviously, there's an onboarding process. To me, the important part is when somebody leaves an organization that there's an offboarding process so that you could put in the proper controls to lock them out of the system. A lot of times people forget about that part of it, right? So
I've always said you can't IT your way out of an HR problem, and they go hand in hand. And we consult with companies, some of whom are very good at the IT part of it, and we're taking over a relatively clean environment, and that's rare, but nice to see. But they are completely deficient on the HR side of things. And as some of the tools that manage the employee side, HR management systems, start to integrate better with the technology systems, and we're talking about almost a completely different thing here, but that allows a lot of control and really good onboarding and offboarding. And I've got some colleagues, not in this area, but other parts of the country, where in addition to mandating IT tools, they are now starting to mandate HR solutions to their clients as well. So they say that not only do you have to standardize on Microsoft Office 365 or some kind of Microsoft platform, you now have to use this HR management solution as well if you want to be a client of ours. So I think that's an interesting direction, I guess. But it makes the process that Ralph's talking about, the onboarding and the offboarding of employees, a lot simpler.
So they're mandating that they have an HR training process that...
Not just training, an actual employee management system. They're called HR information systems or HRIS. Paycom is one, and these aren't endorsements necessarily, but Bamboo HR is another. So it actually manages your employees. When you kind of integrate them into the payroll system and you onboard them from an HR perspective, that goes hand in hand with the IT process behind it as well. So adding them to payroll automatically adds them to Office 365, which automatically adds them to their computer so that they can log in. And then the reverse is also true. When you terminate them from the HR system, it cuts off access to all of these other systems as well. So we're starting to see that a little bit.
At the end of the day, you got to take the human interaction out of you got to build a process that's automated, because once you let the human interaction, then there's 10 steps, and then you get a new employee. Odds are they're going to skip one or two of those steps, and that's where the security issues come.
And internal bad actors aside, there are systems now, and one of them we use for our clients to help train their employees. We actually set up a fake phishing attempt on everybody's computer in the company, and we see who bites. And if somebody bites on that fake phishing attempt, we set them into a group that this group needs training, and we provide them that training. And even the people that don't bite, we still give them other training. And one of the examples that we give them talks about the internal bad actors. It has a very entertaining film that tells you how a bad actor got into this company and worked his way through getting all this information for somebody who was paying him from the outside. So training is key. There are a lot of applications out there now that can provide it. And the key for us is making it part of our base offering, that this is the most significant part of breaches. It's employees. So this really needs to be a part of what you do as a company to protect yourself.
Well, I think Ralph mentioned culture. I think culture is the most important starting point for this. We pitched user awareness training to a client one time, and they pushed back on it, saying that, number one, they trust their employees, and number two, they feel that it's wrong to trick them, which I thought was an interesting take. But I think the problem there wasn't necessarily the approach or the technology or whatever, but it was the culture of that company. And smaller companies, especially the ones that we typically deal with, are a little bit closer knit. Some of them are family owned, or they've known their employees for a very long time. And I think culturally, it would behoove all of our clients to move away from that mentality. It's not about trust. It's not about whether or not an employee is good or bad or problematic. It's not punitive in any way. It's just society. It's just where we're at. These are necessary things that a business requires to function in today's world. So I think clients would, our clients or companies would really benefit from the idea that this just is what it is. It's something that they need to do, and it's important. And it's not necessarily a punitive thing or whatever.
Yeah, it's important to not make it a punitive thing. Everybody makes mistakes, and it's important to identify those mistakes, correct the behaviors where those mistakes are made, and learn from the experience.
So that brings us to remote workers logging in from anywhere. How can companies ensure that their systems are secure, that if somebody's working remote, for instance, in the Philippines, how do they know their systems are secure?
One of the things that we do is we try to ensure that the client only allows corporate-owned and maintained equipment to access their systems remotely. That way, we're in control of what goes on inside that remote machine. We make sure that there is some kind of VPN set up so that it's a secure connection between the two sites. We make sure that all the maintenance is done, and somebody's 14-year-old son isn't doing things on that computer that could compromise it. It's not always possible. Some companies either can't afford or aren't willing to do that, but that is the goal in respect to the way we do it. We really want to have all remote workers working on company-owned and controlled equipment.
That's a big one. That's a requirement for us also. I mean, you have to, if you can't manage what you don't control, right, at the end of the day. So there's that, and then there's also security. There's, again, going through content filtering, monitoring where they're going on the web. Two-factor authentication, we talked a little bit about that. You got to have identity. You have to be able to identify who's logging into the system. And if it's a company that's not logging into your systems from overseas, then you put in US-based IPs so that they can't try to get in from, if somebody's trying to get in from another, obviously there's workarounds of that, but they can't get in from other countries and that kind of stuff.
Mike, would you like to add something?
I would, yes. Just from my approach, I can agree with everything that everybody's saying here, but I do think that really a strong point in the security of an organization is definitely with the training. And just to go back one step, a preferred method to that is to roll out the training for security right in the onboarding process with the employee. When they're filling out their payroll information, the next thing they should be doing is taking security awareness testing so there can be a baseline established of where this employee is at. Are they just going to click on something randomly, or are they an employee that's going to alert IT that, hey, I've got a phishing attack? You want to get that training right out of the way. With a lot of the remote solutions today, the VPN is really a standard as far as connecting back to the office for resources. A virtual private network connection. What that's going to do is create a tunnel from my location to your location, and the information going back and forth between there is encrypted inside of a tunnel. So it's very hard to detect and completely encrypted inside your own protective little bubble there. As well as a lot of everything that we do today is encrypted. When you go into your bank, you use a private encrypted connection. When you visit socialsecurity.com, that's all encrypted to where your web browser is encrypted from your connection to the location, and all the information that passes through is only information you can get. And that same principle applies to remote connections from people logging in remotely. Either they're logging in via VPN, going to a secured website and logging in and using their credentials and additional authentication. Another thing that, just plainly limiting access. So one person, like Ralph had suggested, doesn't have direct access to everything when they log in, as well as encrypting the operating system, having some kind of a cybersecurity policy for remote workers to where, if I'm in the Philippines today, I can't log in from California 20 minutes later, to where there's some kind of intelligence looking at that. As far as everything being secure, the best approach is it's not secure. Everything you're doing is at risk, and keep those factors in mind. And after a period of time and training, you should be a lot better off than you would be without any kind of training, or as well as a protected connection.
Mercy, would you like to add something?
No.
Oh, okay. Just want to make sure everybody gets enough time to discuss everything. So we pretty much covered the employee aspect of it. But Mercy, we will go to you. What percentage of, guess or estimate, of small businesses in our community, the Mahoning and Shenango Valleys, have sufficient cyber security insurance? Do they have it at all?
20%.
20%.
20% at the most. We have in this area what we call, in the insurance business, small to medium-sized businesses, people that are under $100 million of sales. And that's my concentration. I can tell you from statistics that I have seen that the worst are the professionals, the architects, the engineers, the accountants, the attorneys. 50% at the most have coverage, standalone coverage. It's difficult to sell the coverage. Obviously, we're competing with money from these gentlemen, and their money should come first, to be very honest with you. I tell the clients, you need to secure your assets before you're insuring them. Get it secure, then it's going to cost you less for me to insure it. And they'll tell you how difficult that is to get people to do what you ask them to do. Now, the pricing running, I'm going to say $1,500 a million for liability for a small business, for a standalone policy, and maybe $2,500 for $2 million. And it's not unheard of to have clients with $10 and $25 million values that they need to cover. So it's not as good as it should be. It's very hard to get clients to step up until they're forced to, and they're starting to be forced to. Even the banks are starting to force, if you're going to take out a loan, they want to see the coverage. I've had contractors that said, we don't need it, nobody's going to ransom us, and get a call 2 weeks later saying, I need that coverage now. And you say, well, why do you need that coverage now? And they say, well, evidently, we signed a contract that said we needed it, and we didn't realize that, so in order to get paid, we have to buy the coverage. So it's getting forced on people now, too.
I love insurance. It's the single biggest driver of some of the changes that I've been talking about, and we've all been talking about to our clients for a decade. And I'm trying to do Mercy a favor because we are now in the process of mandating that all of our clients have cyber insurance, and we're asking for that information as part of our onboarding process with the client. And we're going back to all of our clients that we've had for, however long they've been a client, and we're saying, do you have coverage? And we kind of it's a two-pronged approach for us. It's, do you have this coverage? It's important, but also we need to know who to call in the event that we detect something on a Saturday night or whatever. We don't want to scramble to find that information in the middle of the heat of the moment. So I think it's going to play a larger role than it possibly already is, and I think it's the single biggest driver of some of the changes that we're looking for as IT companies, so I'm all on board.
I'm suspecting that it's probably a lot of family businesses that don't have coverage because they don't have outsiders, or they're small.
Well, yes, a lot of them don't have. They might have somebody who handles their network that plugs in their computers for them, but that's not what these gentlemen are talking. Much more advanced than that. I can hire anybody out of college to come in and plug my computers together on a network and put it on Microsoft. That's easy. It's all the security work that they have to do to prevent the claims from happening. And they do a wonderful job of it. If people will just concentrate on getting that done, I can save them the money on the insurance end because the security is correct. Because they fill out applications. They fill them out every day for their clients because the clients don't know how to answer the questions. And some of them are very simple questions, but some of them are warranted. And it says, you're going to answer these 5 questions for me. And if you lie or if you make a mistake, we cancel the insurance. You have no claim. And these gentlemen get these every day, and they have to say, they don't have this. Okay, now it's going to either cost them more money or I can't give them the insurance at all. And it's on a daily basis, is it not?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is insurance, and I've seen over the last 10 years, is that they're insuring stuff that they don't even know what they're insuring, right? So you insure a car, you know the value of the car, you get in an accident, they give you the value. They have no idea of what tools, what responsibilities the company, they give them a flyer, and they're getting, the insurance companies are definitely getting better at this now. Before they were like, people would just say, yeah, we're doing this, yeah, we're doing this, yeah, they're doing this. And then you've seen claims over the last 10 years get paid out, and they weren't doing hardly anything. Now, if you say you're doing this and you're not doing it, the insurance will deny the claim. I think long-term, to be honest with you, is a lot of companies, it would be smart for insurance companies to partner with MSPs or people that are doing third-party security for the customer to make sure these things are getting done. Because everybody needs IT from a company standpoint, but nobody even understands what IT should be doing within the organization, right? So their focus is on growing their business, doing what's right. They really just want it to work. They don't care how it works. They want it to work, and they want to make sure that they're protected at the end of the day. So, and that's the challenge is, you have somebody internally they designate as their IT person. Yeah, like you said, they could set up their computers, they could install Office, they could change their passwords. Is it the secure environment? Most likely it's not secure at all. So that's the challenges insurance are running into.
Yeah, we're long past the point where your nephew can do this for you. I think that ended probably 5 to 8 years ago. And one thing that Mercy said that I kind of want to go back to, she mentioned, you said that they don't think that they have anything worth stealing or that they're not a target. That's not how this works, really.
No.
They're bad actors, threat actors who are looking at companies to breach or hack or whatever term you want to use. They're not necessarily targeting one specific company. Do those things happen? Yes, absolutely. But in general, they're scouring the internet looking for low-hanging fruit. And they'll find whatever they need to find. They'll find something. So it's not about whether or not you feel like you have something worth securing or worth stealing. It's everyone's a target.
Everybody's a target that has a bank account, basically, is what I tell the clients. And, over the years, the press, not to be mean, has has stressed ransoms because they're the big money. That's the big things you see. Somebody got ransomed for $4.6 million. That doesn't affect normally the people within our valley, okay? That's not what they're getting. They're getting hit every day in their bank accounts. And it's very hard for a tool and die shop in Salem to withstand a $141,000 withdrawal from their checking account. And it's gone before they even know about it. So these are the things that when I talk to the clients, I say, you could get ransomed, but here's what's the reality. This is what's probably going to happen, and let's just take care of that, and the ransom's going to come right along with it. So it's changing our narrative as insurance agents as to what we're stressing to the clients.
When you say it's going to come through to their bank account, what does that mean? A fake invoice? I mean, what does that mean?
Oh, there's just so many ways. They can do the fake invoices. The ones that I've seen 2 of them, almost the same amount of money, where someone has gotten into the system, and once they get in, they just look around. They just scope it all out and get names and phone numbers and addresses, and they look to see who are your accounts payable, who are your accounts receivable, who's going to owe you money. And the one that the most recent one I saw, obviously they saw there was going to be an invoice for $141,000 sent to a certain company, and they spoofed an email and said, "Hi, it's me, and you know what? We had trouble with such and such a bank, so we're going to such and such a bank in Wisconsin instead. They gave us a much better loan. interest rate, and so we're going to switch to that bank. So here's our new number, and when you send us this month's check for $141,000, send it to this bank instead. If somebody knows exactly how much you're supposed to pay, and you get that, and you're not checking, you do what they tell you, and the money is gone. And now you've got two people, one that's lost their money and one that's not going to get their money because they have none to pay them with. So that's what's happening in this area every single day, right?
Yeah, and that's going back to what Robert said with the low-hanging fruit. You know, if the criminals could get $10,000 from 10 people very easily, that's a lot easier work than going after one company for $100,000, right? So, and again, we hear this, that, you know, our company's too small, who's going to go after us? It's not, like Robert said, it's not about that. They go after everybody. It doesn't matter. And unfortunately, the only press you see is the big companies, the MGMs of the world, the Caesars that got breached, that kind of stuff. But I promise you, it's all the smaller ones that don't make the news.
They don't make the news because they don't file police reports.
Correct. Well, they don't. Yeah,
and
exactly.
they don't want to make the news.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
and that's a problem. We know it's going on.
Because it's a reputation thing for the company too, right? So they don't want people to know. So if you call the police has to call the FBI. And once the FBI knows, it's going to be all over the news, and they don't really want to do that because they know at the end of the day, the FBI is probably not going to go get them. I mean, it's for a very little amount, and they're going to be, you know, it's just impossible for them to grab. So
I recall covering a story recently, and actually a few years ago. The only way we got it was they filed a police report, and we had to track that down. Yep. And it used to be in reporting that reporters would be at all the police stations reading what was filed the night before. That doesn't happen today. Not enough reporters. And so really, the press would like to report these stories. We would love to report who lost $141,000 and how it happened. And it would be a great example story.
it'd be better for us because then more people would just knocking on our door instead of us telling them what they need to do. They would already know we need to do something. So that would help us out greatly. But
and the way that I have to sell the insurance is with the stories. I have to tell the clients, this is what happened in such and such a city. This is what happened here. I can't use names, but I can give them basic ideas of this is how it worked. It happened last week in Niles. It happened last week in Warren. And then they start to pay attention. Then it's somebody maybe they know. They don't know if they know this person, but maybe they know somebody that's had this happen and they've discussed it. They've had little chats in between each other. I've seen personal losses of thousands of dollars in banking, not businesses. Gentlemen having money stolen out of their accounts in, like a Schwab account or something like that as they were transferring money. So it's not just businesses that are getting hit. It's personal money now that's being stolen too out of homes.
you go back to Mercy's story too. I'm willing to bet that most likely they didn't have two-factor on their email, and somebody was logging in as them, and watching the interactions they're having between their emails, right? So when you get that email that says, "Hey, I changed my bank," they already know how that person how they talk to each other. So they write an email, and they're writing it. It's not even a spoofed email. They're probably writing it from that person's email. So nothing would flag that, right? So we always say, especially in the banking, it's more of an educational thing. Always pick up the phone. I don't care if you've been doing business with somebody for 20 years. If they send you an email that they want to change a number, pick up the phone and call them and say, "Hey, I just got this email. Is this really you?" And that's part of the educational process, because technology is not going to fix that.
Right, and I want to jump off of one thing here. Multi-factor authentication is probably the single most important thing that you can do to protect your account. And I would argue that it probably protects 95% of the scenarios.
Especially in the email.
However, session token theft is a new and upcoming problem that is not solved. I'll explain what it is. It's not solved by multi-factor authentication. And that is a scenario or a situation where someone, let's say, clicks on an email, and it opens up their web browser, and it takes them to a website that steals all of the cookies and all of the saved information that are in that web browser, including the Office 365 session token, which is part of the security process when you log in and you provide that two-factor code. So by stealing that information that's embedded into the browser and saved within the browser, they no longer need that multi-factor authentication code anymore. They can just replicate your entire web browser session in their environment. It's a little technically complicated, but it goes back to what we're talking about with layers. Because for years I've been telling clients multi-factor authentication is mandatory, it's the way to go, it solves a lot of these problems, and now here we are with a new issue not solved by the thing that I've been talking about for the last however many years. So it goes back to education, awareness, but layers, and having different technologies in place to protect you against new and upcoming and changing environments.
What was the term you used?
Session, token,
Session,
theft or-
SESSI
Yes,
token.
so the browser session that you have, it creates there's a little security token embedded in that, and they steal that token, that cookie, those settings.
Going back to multi-factor security, explain what that means to me.
So,
Business
so
people like me.
basically, you are allowing a pre-authenticated person to confirm that what you're trying to do is okay. You're trying to log into something. So I would have had to pre-authenticate myself as the person of who I am and what device I have a code on, and then whatever application asks me for that code, it's coming from my cell phone, which is producing that code. I type that code in. It's not just logging into the software. It's a third party or device that's providing me the ability to authenticate into that software.
So how do I install that in my company?
You hire somebody like us, first of all.
Okay, well, how is it done?
Okay, so basically, most software has the capability inherently to allow for multi-factor authentication. And generally, there's going to be a little code that shows up on a screen that you take the authentication app on your phone and you scan that code, and it takes you through the process of verifying that you're actually you. And it's really very simple. And the simpler it has become recently, the better it is, because people will actually do it. If you make it too complex, people won't do it or they won't follow it.
I would make maybe not counter argument, because I don't think that's the right word, but I would make the point to say that companies, our clients, need to choose to work with vendors who build this technology into their systems inherently.
Absolutely.
There's a term, and it's escaping me at the moment, but certain companies won't invest in this kind of infrastructure. So two-factor authentication is getting easier, but it's only getting easier for the companies that allow it to be easy.
And one of the factors that has made that easier is insurance companies. Everybody wants to bash insurance companies, but in the past few years, the questionnaires that are coming out of insurance companies for cyber insurance are a very useful tool in talking to our clients about, look what the insurance companies are doing. There are 5 different questions on this application about multi-factor authentication, and you're not doing it at all? This is crazy. And sometimes we'll even make the argument, sometime in the future, this is going to be required by definitely your insurance company, probably your bank, probably your accounting firm, and a bunch of other entities. So it's time to get on the bandwagon. This is one of the most effective things. And as Bob said, nothing is foolproof. There are ways around everything. It's an arms race.
Okay, so is it expensive for a small business to
It really
hire
isn't.
you folks
No,
to?
No, it's not
not.
expensive at all.
What are we talking about?
Couple bucks.
Few bucks a user.
If you're
It depends on what you have. I mean, that's
Yeah.
one layer, like Robert said. But.
if you're using the right technology, and I use the term right, we are mandating that all of our clients use a certain Microsoft Office license type, as I'm sure everybody else is, because that's basically a best practice. But if you're using the proper software, it's built in, it's free, it's in there already. You just need to turn it on and check the boxes and configure it properly.
So two-factor's been around forever. The easiest way to explain it is the banking system's been doing it, right, forever. That's just, you carry a little token. You can still do that even with this. They've just made it easier with technology. You can use your cell phone as your token, so you don't have to carry And I go back to education, because we had, this is stuff, even from an IT perspective of how far do we go, because we had one customer had two-factor on their email, and it would alert them on their phone when they log in. Every time they logged in their email from another device, it would give them a prompt to say, hey, is this you? And obviously, if you're going to another device, you would say yes. They kept getting that prompt, and they got fatigued from that, and they started saying, okay. on that. So now we had to call the customer and say, we're getting these reports that we asked, where are you at? Oh, I'm in my office. Well, then we're getting reports that somebody's logging in, from another country. Are you getting any prompts? He said, yeah, I'm getting a prompt. I'm just saying okay to it. It's like, okay, well, we put two-factor on. Now we got to explain what that means. You should be calling your IT company. If you're getting an alert that says, hey, I'm trying to log on and you're not trying to log on from a different location, then there's something wrong. That means your original username and password has got taken, and so you got to change your password, because that's the first factor. The second factor is getting to you, and you have to, that's the importance of two-factor, is that if your stuff does get breached in the dark web and somebody gets your username and password, because the problem is everybody has 50 passwords and they're relatively close because nobody remembers 50 passwords, so they keep them the same, and that's, so then they end up, that gets out on the dark web, and they could reverse engineering to try to get into your company login.
Can't IT your way out of an HR problem.
Exactly.
And that's all the more reason why a password manager is important.
Exactly.
Our base offering includes a password manager because it's just something that everybody should have. I, as an IT professional, don't expect you to remember all 284 passwords that you have to use in a day. And really, with things like single sign-on or SSO, that number should be, being reduced. But you still have a lot of passwords. I recognize that, and they should all be different, and they should all be complicated, and that's almost impossible to do without a password manager. Or you open yourself up to bad practices. I mean, I found one guy recently, it's probably been a year ago, but he wrote all of his passwords down on a piece of paper and put it in his wallet. And I just, don't do that. Don't do things like that. So we're trying to enable better practices by giving clients tools.
Let's move on to artificial intelligence. What are the benefits and challenges, if any, from this new thing that's coming on with artificial intelligence and how companies are using it? Is that another issue in cybersecurity? And how is it an issue? How does that occur? How do breaches occur through artificial intelligence?
I mean, it could be as simple as an employee using AI to perform a function of their job and supplying private, confidential company info to that AI platform, and sometimes without even thinking about it. There's no, we haven't gotten to a point yet where our clients are really addressing this, and shadow IT is always a problem. That's where, employees of companies take IT into their own hands to, make their lives easier or whatever the case may be.
Now, what did you say, shadow?
Shadow IT. Mm-hmm. And our clients sometimes don't know that AI is being used in their environment. If you've got a marketing manager who took it upon themselves to sign up for an AI platform in order to generate prompts or content or whatever the case may be, the owner of the company or the IT provider may not know that. So that to me is I think the concern here is that we haven't even created the policies to address these situations yet because it's all so new.
And artificial intelligence isn't all bad. You're hearing all of these horror stories about artificial intelligence is going to take over the world, the Terminator scenario, all of that. There are a lot of good things about artificial intelligence. That's why it's becoming such a talked about subject. And it can be on the positive side. For instance, artificial intelligence can detect when weird things are happening and look at a bunch of different data and say, even though you haven't had a virus installed on your PC, these things are happening that are indicating something might be wrong. So based on this artificial intelligence identifying that issue, we're going to take some additional steps. That's artificial intelligence too. And there are a lot of different ways to do that. Updates, like everybody's software on every computer should be updated completely. Artificial intelligence can make sure that happens properly, can make sure that everything is done the way that it's supposed to be done without human intervention. It's a robot doing it, and it just makes sure it gets done properly. And the bad side is also there. Artificial intelligence can spoof things. It can spoof email, it can spoof people, it can spoof your face, it can spoof how you write. So it's a mixed bag. We're very early in artificial intelligence development right now. I mean, I remember years ago when the internet first came out, everybody jumped on the internet bandwagon and spent a ton of money on it, and it was 5 years before anybody made any money on the internet. We're at a point now with artificial intelligence where we need to step back and we need to really think about what the pros and cons of it are, and we need to do some planning and figuring out how to protect from it and how to use it effectively for the proper purposes.
Anyone else on that?
I mean, like again, like what they reiterated, but AI is going to be used for positive and for negative, right? So the bad guys that are doing bad stuff now, they're going to use AI to help facilitate and speed up that process. Just like we're using AI internally to help automate a lot of stuff. It helps us write scripts, it helps us do a lot of things faster because we'll say, hey, we'll tell it to do something, and then obviously you got to tweak it and stuff like that. So. There's good and bad. I mean, we're
And that was a key word, speed. Things are going to happen so much faster with artificial intelligence that you have to be prepared. The old days of, I have antivirus, so I'm protected, are over. Things are going to happen so quickly now that once something's detected, it has to be acted upon like that, or you're going to get a ransom note. And that's where artificial intelligence will help.
We're getting near the end of the discussion in terms of our time limit. I'd like to ask about the Internet of Things, which we've all heard about, but what is it? And how does this fit into the realm of cybersecurity, if at all?
The Internet of Things is, you guys want to? Okay. The Internet of Things is basically all things connected. It is your computer, it is your cell phone, it is your refrigerator, it is your smart TV, and it is the communications paths that all of those things use to talk to each other. So there are pros and cons to that as well. If you're on a home network, I'll use a home network as an example, and you have a PC and everything is connected on your wireless network at home, and somebody gets into your computer somehow, they now have access to all those other things that are connected to your computer, right? So as everything becomes more connected, the positive part is things talk to each other and make your life easier and do things for you. The negative part of it is if there's some vulnerability somewhere, now all of those other things on the Internet of Things are exposed to that vulnerability.
Internet of Things, can be as simple as Alexa in your living room, giving that commands. That is a device that responds to voice commands that can do various functions throughout the house. You can have devices that are connected to your wireless to open your blinds, indicate that there's a message in your mailbox. I mean, all of these devices all connected, just like David had said, and they're all bound to you, to your identity, to where if someone could come in and exploit that vulnerability, not only do they have access to your devices, but really all of your information, your habits, your spending habits, your web surfing activity, and really it can narrow down a lot of information to further exploit you for monetary gain or just accessing your systems or using your equipment for nefarious purposes. So really it's an added layer of security that has to be involved with these devices that really are kind of set and forget. You're not going to be constantly using it and checking the security on that, to where going along the original lines as far as the training on how to use that, in addition to keep that updated along with general security practices. Got to focus on keeping those secure just as you would with your computer, your cell phone, or your personal information.
So Mercy, does that mean we need to have cybersecurity insurance on our homeowners policy?
Thank you. That was going to bring that up. You can attach, most people have identity theft on their homeowners policy, but you can now start to purchase personal cyber coverage either under your homeowners, or you can buy individual policies now are being sold. And yes, what they will do is they will cover, with identity theft, they will help you restore your identity, but they won't restore money. With a personal cyber policy, they'll restore the money that might have been stolen from you up to a certain value. And they throw in some very interesting coverages. One of the coverages they throw in, and I tell people that have teenagers, is cyberbullying. They give you coverage if your child, or even an adult, with such as revenge porn, decides to go out and bully somebody using their home internet service, and they get sued for it. And they will even cover mental health necessities for a child or an adult that's been bullied and over the internet. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting things out there, and it's inexpensive. It's really not expensive at all to have it. And if you are doing home teaching or banking or Schwab, something like that on your personal computer, all of that's in there. And if they get in, they can vanish your Schwab account in no time. So yeah, it's important that you try and get some personal cyber insurance too.
That's not standard on a homeowner's policy.
Not normally. It's not normally included. You have to ask for it. There's only a few companies offering it right now. There's probably 5 to 6 companies that are offering it as of right now, but it's going to become more popular. Within the next year, you're going to see it coming out more and more. And some of the companies are backing off and saying, no, we don't want to do it. It's too much of an exposure. We can't control it. And they might be right. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Well, we're getting near the end of time, so let's wrap it up with some final thoughts. Please, everybody, just kind of feedback, some final thoughts, what we haven't covered, what you'd like to mention, what you want to underscore, whatever it may be. And Michael, we'll start with you.
Sure. Just today's environment, training, the age of your equipment or equipment retention and your patch level are the most important things you can do in your business. If you keep everything fairly new, all your equipment patched, all your end users caught up on training, the chances of something happening, there's always going to be a chance there, but it's going to minimize that, and you're going to have less of a severe business impact if you do have some kind of a cyber event or a disaster recovery situation.
The basics. So every business should have an updated functional firewall. Every business should. Every business should have a backup and disaster recovery device of some sort that can take your systems back to where a breach happened. Every client should have antivirus and malware detection that includes EDR, which is endpoint detection and recovery. The old antivirus isn't good enough anymore. As Mike said, properly maintained and secured equipment is critical. And the other main thing, and these are the basics again, is training. 88 to 95% of breaches happen because of human error. Train your employees on what to look for, what not to look for. There are tools out there to do it. There are companies like us that will absolutely help you do that.
I teach insurance agents cyber all over the United States because it's difficult to understand. And one of the things I tell them is that they're going to have to turn to these gentlemen sitting here at this table to get help in order to let the clients know what they really need in order to get the cyber insurance. It's very difficult for some people to understand. And these gentlemen are the key. They've got to be let into the companies to get the security set up. After that, I can do all kinds of wonderful things for them, but the security has to come first. And the second rule is, if you have an incident, don't call your insurance agent. We have no idea how to help you. Call these people, call the breach number inside your insurance policy, but don't call me.
I agree with what Dave and Mike said, so I'll go in a different direction with all the standards. When we're talking about the Internet of Things, it's our responsibility as IT companies to manage, secure an environment. The challenge we run into is there is the Internet of Things, and people are bringing a lot of things into the network. So knowing what's on the network is very important, and being able to segment off what's business from employees' personal stuff, or a microwave or a refrigerator that's connected, making sure those are segmented off. Because at the end of the day, we need to protect what's important, which is the data and the productivity of the companies. So I would say for companies, make sure when things are coming in, start looking at, because everything connects to the network anymore. It doesn't matter if it's camera systems, if it's security systems, everything connects to the network, and you have to know what's on your network. So
I'm going to close the way I always close. Companies need to take this seriously. Companies need to make the proper investments into their IT infrastructure, and they need to allow a professional to do this. I've been saying it for a long time, and I said it today. We are long past the point where your nephew or your buddy or somebody can do this on the side. I think that was over probably 10 years ago, but certainly in the last couple of years, that's not an option any longer.
I want to thank you all. This has been outstanding. It's been absolutely outstanding.
The Business Journal Roundtable series is sponsored by iSynergy, creative digital advertising.